I'm Christy.
And I'm Kathy.
And this is The Psychic
And the Skeptic. Welcome back to The Psychic and the Skeptic. And this episode is the Paranormal Part 5, which is our series on different types of paranormal activity. We are going to focus on the topic of skinwalkers in this episode. With that said, I want to make sure that I am addressing the risk for cultural appropriation here and that there's growing concern about misrepresentation of Native American traditions in popular culture or even in discussions like this in a podcast episode because it's a sensitive topic and culturally it is usually not a topic that is open for discussion. There's thought that there could be bad luck associated with it or that we could cause there to be an instance where more of them would show up. And of course, that is not our intent. Just like we do on any paranormal investigations, we're always coming in with the best intentions. And as far as this episode, there's no disrespect intended at all with any Native or Navajo traditions. We, of course, respect that this is not usually a topic discussed. So we want to come at this from the perspective of bringing in information so that there can be respect on traditions.
Correct.
And skinwalkers falls underneath a bigger umbrella of a type of activity we would probably call shapeshifters.
Correct.
Or
Shape-shifting. Yeah.
So this also falls in a category within the paranormal of cryptozoology because it has to do with animals. So more specifically, Christy, explain to us what is a skinwalker?
So basically, skinwalkers have origin in Navajo tradition. And in the Navajo language, I probably won't say it.
I was going to say, can you say this?
Yeah, I'm going to try. But it's pronounced as Yi Nalushi. And that means with it, he goes on all fours. Now, the skinwalker in Navajo tradition are very feared figures. And unlike a benevolent type of spiritual healer or medicine man, these skinwalkers are actually believed to be witches who use their power for harm. So kind of like bad medicine. I've known some Native American people. In fact, my background even, we are Native American, Choctaw and Cherokee, and I have heard about bad medicine being used. And some Native Americans will even make up these little medicine pouches and they put certain herbs that are supposed to be good and protective and they'll wear that either around their neck or on their belt. And that's supposed to help protect from any sort of bad medicine.
Or what is it, like curses and things?
Yes. But they believe good medicine can create balance or healing. Now, as far as what the skinwalkers actually look like, they can appear in various forms, a coyote or a wolf. They can even mimic taking in the shape of a certain human. But when they appear, they typically exhibit characteristics that they are known for, like sharp teeth and claws, fur, glowing red eyes. But this is only when they're in the animal form. So if they're in human form, they're just going to look like a certain human, like whoever they're mimicking.
Oh, I always thought it was a human transformed into some type of animal.
That's normally what they would do if they were going to go into an animal form. But if they are taking the form of just a human, then they'll look like a normal human. Okay. So in fact, I had a couple of friends in the past who were Native, and they were on my team for a little while. We were doing an investigation, and this lady comes around this corner and she sees what she thinks is her husband walk through this little hallway into another door. And she's calling his name, trying to get his attention, and he's not responding. And then all of a sudden, her true husband comes up behind her. And she's like, "What? I just saw you go into this door." And he's, "Nope, that wasn't me." And so she's like, "Man, it must have been a skinwalker."
You told me this story, and didn't you say that she has a Native background?
Yeah.
So that probably comes from her cultural beliefs and her first thought was this is a skinwalker, but I've heard of some other paranormal theory where spirit may try to mimic us.
That is true. And they're not necessarily a skinwalker.
Right.
They just imitate one of us. I've had that happen multiple times on an investigation.
I remember
before.
early on in my time as an investigator, when I was on a team in Florida, I captured an EVP that mimicked what one of the other investigators was saying.
Yeah.
It like literally echoed.
Yeah, and they've even known sometimes they'll take on the same voice as an investigator. So now that doesn't make them a shapeshifter.
As the skeptic, I could explain some of that, but that's going down a rabbit hole. So back to the skinwalker. Interesting that happened to her, but maybe not a skinwalker.
It could have just been a spirit that was mimicking, but she thought it was.
Yeah.
You know, again, that's a culturistic type
and
thing.
It points to all the cultural beliefs and where these stories come from. And who's to say it was a skinwalker? And what is this person's background and experience in witnessing such an event?
When you are raised on these stories, then you'll believe them. So yeah, it's definitely a culturistic thing. Now, in the Navajo legend, they also believe that the skinwalkers can include a deformed human-like body as well. But most of the time, they're seen as the witches that will go into the wolf type shape.
Okay, as you tell us about what these are, my head is going towards the history and the origin. And like you mentioned, the stories told over the generations. And some of the lore comes from the fact that these may have been used as moral lessons.
Oh, I fully believe
Taught
that.
to children. And
Yes.
because that's one of the main points in the symbolism is that shape-shifting stories often highlight themes of humility, respect for nature, and the consequences of one's actions. So I immediately think this is that story that you were told as a kid. Now, don't go out there with your medicine ways and use them for bad because bad things are going to happen, right? So it teaches kids how to behave. And we've got our own stories in Western culture.
Yeah, don't go into the woods at a certain time because the skinwalkers are out there and they're going to get
This
you.
is what
you
they
know?
were taught.
Yeah.
And then I'm thinking maybe somebody goes and has an actual experience. They see something strange in the woods, and it may not be something paranormal, but it could be something out of the normal, or their eyes were playing tricks on them, and they've got all these stories from childhood. So I think it just could be generation after generation of a deep belief in something that was meant to be a moral lesson.
Could be. And I will tell you something with the Native American culture is that they do believe in passing down their culture through storytelling. They were huge on it, especially since many of the Native Americans didn't have a written language. It wasn't until Sequoyah came along and wrote the Cherokee alphabet that they started to develop a written language. Some of them would tell their stories by drawing pictures, but then again, a lot was done through oral storytelling. So oral storytelling is a huge part of Native American culture.
It makes sense that this shape shifting happens with an animal, because if part of the moral lesson is using your gifts for good, there's a connection to nature here, which is
that's huge in Native American culture.
Emphasizing that bond between humans and the natural world.
Yes. And Native Americans believe in the creator. They believe that just like our Western thought is on God, the Native Americans believe that God is basically the creator because he created everything.
And this connection to nature brings back that belief that all things possess a spirit, to include animals too.
Yes.
So when you have a humanoid figure transition to an animal, it connects humans with nature as well as the spirit with nature.
Correct.
We're talking about skinwalkers here, but I also heard the term shapeshifter. So is there a difference between the two?
Yes and no. Your skinwalker basically is a shapeshifter, but the word shapeshifter is a being can change its physical form into these various types of creatures or objects.
So the skinwalker is strictly just a Navajo tradition for a witch that turns into an animal.
Pretty much.
But a shapeshifter could be anything that shapes into something
more
outside of
something.
its origin.
Yes.
So it's a cultural difference. So we call this cryptozoological creature, Bigfoot, but out in the Eastern world, they call it the Yeti.
Yeah, exactly. And the Skinwalker is supposedly a specific type of evil from this Navajo folklore that uses the dark magic and like the bad medicine to transform. Okay.
Right. So again, back to that moral lesson.
Yeah.
This is what happens when you do evil.
Yes. You can change your appearance into something like an animal, but really like a predatory type animal, like a wolf, a coyote, a fox, owl, a crow, or another human. So that's kind of like the difference between the shapeshifter and the skinwalker.
Okay. So I've seen pictures of what one of these skinwalkers looks like, and it looks like a Native American wearing some sort of animal skin. Can you explain why it's the skin of the animal wrapped around them?
Yeah, it's because it's more of like a ritualistic type thing. So the witch would put on the animal pelt of whatever predatory animal she was wanting to turn into. So the wolf, for example. So she would put the wolf pelt on. Then it would be like a magical spell or ritual that she would do to turn herself into this skinwalker. So if she was going after a wolf, she'd do the spell, boom, she would turn into a wolf and perform the ritual. They knew these magic spells. They could use these spells or charms to either cause sickness on a person or death or some sort of misfortune. They would even perform curses, and they would take up the crushed powder of a human's bones and blow it into the face of a person. And sometimes that would either cause paralysis of the person or death. They were known for being very quick. So they had this agile strength when they were the skinwalker, and they would go so fast people couldn't catch them. And I think that's something that goes into the lure of where people are like, they're there 1 minute and they're not. Kind of like what a Bigfoot would do. Sometimes they're real quick and they're there and then they're gone. But there's also this thing where the skinwalkers can control a person's mind through these rituals. And they can not only do mind possession, but take control of a person's body. I even saw this old documentary on TV once where it was talking about this woman. She was actually psychic, and she had this vision that the bread was tainted with a bacteria, and she had to get the message out to this next town because her town was totally destroyed by it, right? And so when she went to the next town to try to deliver the message, hey, don't eat this bread, they thought she was a witch. And they put her to death.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And so with skinwalkers, bad medicine is a taboo. And that's why they want to protect themselves from these skinwalkers.
It's like the same message, but just different story depending on which culture is telling this story.
Well, and there was steps that a person had to actually do ritualistically to become a skinwalker. And they had to do some sort of act like kill someone that was a close relative of them. And this kind of marks their entry into becoming a skinwalker. And again, because this is such a taboo subject, the Navajo people discourage talk about skinwalkers.
Right. So I can see how this story has evolved, because originally it sounds like they were just dressed up and doing these spells, and somehow it turns into shape-shifting. I wonder if maybe there was an occurrence where somebody saw some kind of animal behavior in the woods that was abnormal, and then this animal was sick or injured, so it was dark. Somebody could have witnessed something, and it had a humanoid shape to it, so they just assume one of these witches has now turned into an animal.
Yeah, is a shapeshifter. And there is some history in the past of stories of these skinwalkers that would chase travelers at night, or they would scratch at the windows, or they would see them, like you said, in these animal type shapes. Or they would say that these shapeshifters would come up and they would knock on the doors of families to terrify them.
Gosh. So this story evolves over time into this legend.
Yes, for sure. So over time, things have just gotten passed down. There's been records for the 19th and 20th centuries where anthropologists have actually documented these Navajo beliefs and noting the fear of these witches, these skinwalkers. And so they played a role in the Navajo law or social order and have been the explanation of a lot of these illnesses or misfortunes within the Navajo people. So again, it's that folklore.
Yeah, it serves socially as a way to enforce taboos, warning against misuse of power, and explains the misfortune when a community suffers from something like an illness. So things that create fear bring on this fascination that has people tied to these stories over the years, and it has had its way of getting into modern and pop culture nowadays, which is where there's some disagreement on how there's cultural appropriation that could be going on here, where we're blending cultures and bringing Navajo tradition into television and movies, which in itself is taboo, because then the legend and the stories become diluted with our own entertainment purposes.
Yeah, especially with Hollywood involved, you know.
Right. And there's a story in particular about this one ranch out in Utah where there was an experience by a family back in the 1990s. Skinwalker Ranch is 512 acres in Unitah County in Utah. So it's in the northeastern part of the state.
And that's so weird too, because the Skinwalker originated mainly in Arizona and New Mexico and just a little portion of southern Utah. So how did this get its name, and why is it Skinwalker
Again,
Ranch?
It's legends, and people of Navajo background can live all over. So it could be somebody who's familiar with the traditions. So yes, this ranch has a reputation as a hot spot for paranormal activity in general, to include UFO sightings.
Oh, okay.
They've had strange lights and unexplained animal mutilations, so with cattle and stuff on the property. So you might have heard of some of these stories, yes.
Okay, it's not just related to the Skinwalker.
Right. It got the Skinwalker Ranch name because of what one family who lived on the ranch had experienced in the 90s. But even before then, there were the Myers, Kenneth and Edith, who owned that property from 1934 all the way into 1994, so for 60 years. They sold the home to Terry and Gwen Sherman in 1994, and this is the family that had strange experiences. They reported lights in the sky. The animal mutilations were one of the more disheartening things that they'd experienced. For example, some of their cattle had a hole poked into one of their eyes, or I know this is a little graphic, but yeah. And some of the carcasses were found, but there was no trace of any blood, but yet it was drained of all blood and body fluids.
I've heard of stuff like this before.
This is that property. This happened in the 90s. And they experienced some crop circles as well. And one of the cattle carcasses was found at the bottom of a tree that had all the limbs removed from it. So a lot of this points to that UFO type activity. I think even one story that they mentioned was it had snowed and there was cattle print in the snow that all of a sudden disappeared.
Wow.
Like the cow just lifted up into the air.
I've heard even about the cattle mutilations and different things. And there's also a theory back behind that the government is behind it.
Of course there is.
I know.
Always
like
a conspiracy.
Government conspiracy. Right. So like they're monitoring the cattle and mutilating just to keep up with the beef nowadays, and how the beef production is, and if the beef is tainted.
If we really needed to inspect a farm, I'm sure there'd be a way to go about doing that in a normal way. If there's concern and evidence to say that, hey, there could be diseases, we need to come inspect your cattle. I'm sure I'm not a rancher. Let us know if you have any specifics on that. But anyway, this family had some strange things that they couldn't explain. So they sell the property. They were only there for about 2 years.
They're I'm out of here.
Yeah, I'm losing our cattle. So that's the income for them.
Sure.
So they sold it to this Robert Bigelow, who's a UFO enthusiast. And he has this organization called the National Institute for Discovery Science, and he conducted investigations, but found little conclusive evidence. So he had the property for about 20 years, I think from 1996 to 2016. So a long time. And he didn't have any of these experiences. Mind you, the last people were there for 2 years. So maybe the aliens got what they needed and we're gone.
Okay, so he didn't experience any of these, like with the cattle mutilations.
Nothing conclusive, little conclusive. So maybe there were a few strange things, but he couldn't find any evidence to explain what was happening. So so then in 2016, this Brandon Fugel, and I might be saying his name wrong, he is the current owner and has purchased it for his own studies. So he's implementing some scientific approach to this phenomenon, supposedly. So his team has set up advanced technology to document and analyze reported activities. He's including a partnership with some other tech companies to create secure data center for research. That was his initial intent.
Okay, so wait a second. So the current owner bought it to study. Yes, but if the guy before that, who was into like aliens and stuff, if he wasn't getting that much activity, why would someone want to come along and buy this property?
This Brandon Fugel purchased again in 2016, but 4 years later, he starts a TV show called Skinwalker Ranch. So maybe he was focused more on the Skinwalker legend, whereas the other guy was researching UFOs. Okay. So he might have he had a different approach or wanted to do a scientific view. So some of our listeners may be aware of the TV show. I think it's on the History Channel, and it has 6 seasons out so far. And it's really evolved into this fantastical, I don't even know. I haven't watched, so I have to be honest. I haven't seen the series, but to have 6 years of content and it's still ongoing, that some of the critics will say that it's turned more into an entertainment, which I guess originally it would be if we're talking about folklore and legend and fears. This is how it plays into pop culture. Now that there's this fascination with it and you throw in these supposed scientific, I could be making fun of the people just like us who do paranormal investigations and come in with all these tools trying to capture this activity, and then you turn it into a show that keeps people coming back day after day.
So supposedly he's finding evidence of some sorts. And is it Skinwalker evidence or is it UF evidence?
There's no way to know if he's finding evidence without watching the show and seeing what he's putting out there. He has a TV show with content that gets people watching, enough so that it's lasted 6 seasons.
What is the content about though?
It's about the Skinwalker Ranch and how he's investigating. So he's probably got videos of things that some of the critics say that they're doctored videos or embellished experiences that are exaggerated, again, to keep watchers watching. That's the critic viewpoint. And I guess in recent episodes, they're even launching rockets, which gets more people to watch because rockets are cool. And I'm not sure the purpose of the rockets. And even some of the critics weren't really sure about it as well. But again, all this to say, it's a television show. And their purpose for television shows is to get viewers. So that is where this overlap with pop culture and modern culture waters down the true legend and upsets Navajo, because it's not the true story of what they've experienced from decades, centuries even, prior to modern time.
Even the name of that show, Skinwalker Ranch.
Well, that's the ranch is called. It's the nickname of the ranch because of this. So the original owner or the people who experienced the strange phenomenon might have had some prior knowledge of this Navajo legend about the Skinwalker. So one of their experiences included this Skinwalker experience. So therefore it then got dubbed Skinwalker Ranch.
I think it's a bunch of hooey if you ask me.
Well, yeah.
So
I haven't even gotten to my true skepticism, but just some of the explanation behind legends have a lot to do oftentimes in history with trying to keep people good and keep kids from misbehaving, keeping people from misusing their practices for evil. And so if you give them a scary story, it tends to scare them away from the negative.
I've seen a couple of TV shows, and again, it is TV. One of these, I don't even remember what the show was, but there was something on this rock and it was zoomed in because the rock was a little ways away.
So this is a video.
This is a video, yes. you can see what appears to be this human, and this human crouches down on all four and then suddenly changes into this wolf-like being. It's probably been a good year or so ago.
Okay, so
that I
it
saw
was it a modern video, like the
yeah.
video recording?
Yeah.
So my skepticism in this is any modern video are people looking for clicks and likes and follows and notoriety. So there's lots of edits out there. Could be something like that situation. There's tons of videos out there that have been edited.
This wasn't on the internet, though. This was on television.
Well, sure. Exactly. Same thing. People have this video, and TV shows are going to share videos from the internet as well.
Now, the other one I would say is a little more compelling. It does come from Josh Gates.
Yes.
He
Big fan.
Yes, I'm a big fan of his too. But he's got a show called Expedition X.
Right.
And it's
a spinoff.
who is the biologist. And they used to have, which I loved her, and I hate that she's gone, Jess. She's no longer there on the show, but they've got a new girl on there now. But when this was captured, Jess was still on there, and they were investigating claims of skinwalkers, and they did different locations. Well, they did a lot of interviews with people telling them, hey, don't pick up hitchhikers, because if you do, then you know it's liable to be one of these skinwalkers.
Yeah, and this was from their season 6, episode 7. Is that correct? Or season 7, episode 6? I don't know, 6, 7.
One of those. Yeah, they were driving down the road, and all of a sudden
they weren't at Skinwalker Ranch. They were somewhere else.
But they were driving down the road. It's in this one town that supposedly has reports of the skinwalkers.
Right.
But as they're driving, they happen to see this person off on the right that they pass. But as they pass, they swore that the legs, like from the knee down, was like hairy, and it was hoofed.
Yeah, I remember this video. This was at night, so it was dark outside, and there was snow on the ground.
Yes.
And my first thought was, it's a grainy video because it's taken from a camera inside a moving car videoing something outside. So it looked a little grainy around the person, and it's also a night vision too, so a little bit lower quality. And it's because they mentioned that fur on their legs.
Yes. Yeah, and supposedly the skinwalkers, they can't change their feet. And they're like, they can't change that.
Because they were warned about that by a local.
Yes.
They said when you see a hitchhiker, they can't change their feet. So they're going to
don't pick them up. But one of the things that you can tell if it's a true hitchhiker is their feet, because they can't change that. So
meaning they would look like a hoof.
Yeah.
But a skinwalker
like
is supposed to be
animal.
a human that turns into an animal. So you'd think it.
Correct.
So that doesn't make sense with the legend.
No. So there is some
misinterpretation and changing of the tradition.
Of it.
Yeah.
But as Jess and Phil are driving, they pass this figure and they're like, oh my gosh, wait a second. Did you see that? And they're referencing to
his feet.
The lower part of it. So they turn around and they go back to try to see this individual. Yeah, to find him. And he's not there. They're nowhere to be found. So they freak out a little bit of it.
Yeah, and they had thermal imaging cameras too. And I saw this clip, and it's like they scan really quickly. So I don't know if they really scanned well enough to see where this person went, because my thought is he turned into a driveway and he's in his house now. When they turned around, he could have been walking home or something. But to me, I saw that video, and the fur on the lower leg could be furry boots. But then we looked again at the video, and I saw like a reflection off his shoe, what you would see from your sneakers and how they reflect at night, so you don't get hit by a car when you're out running or something.
But when you play it back, though, again, like the footage that they have, you don't see that. It does look like furry feet to me, whether it's boots or not.
Yeah, I saw something shiny on the back of the heel. I did, kind of like a sneaker would have a reflection on
when they first passed by it. Yes. Yeah. But when they replay it and go back, I don't know. I didn't really see that again. So it does look like something that's hooved and hairy. But again, you are looking at it very quickly as they're driving by.
But it doesn't fit the legend. One.
It doesn't. No.
And
it changes.
It looked very much like a person walking.
Yeah.
To me, that's me. I'm the skeptic.
No, I agree with you.
Yeah.
And even from a spiritual point of view, from the psychic point of view, on the skinwalker, can I say that they truly exist? No, I can't. I've never had a spirit come over and tell me that, oh, skinwalkers are real.
Or beware the skinwalker. Yeah.
And I've never personally seen one myself in person. So I lean toward more of this just being that folklore.
Yeah, and you can look at this from a biological standpoint, and you know that there's no way that cells can morph or rearrange in a way to then become a whole other being. The DNA, the code in there is set. That cell is going to be that type of human cell, and it just cannot transform into an animal cell. Well, likewise, the physics that would have to be involved to shape and morph, it just doesn't exist.
Right. Can a person's physical body actually change like that? No, there's no science behind that. I agree with that. There is no science. It's basically impossible, which leads me to believe that this is just folklore
and legend. Grandma and Grandpa told somebody once to help keep them in line, and Grandma and Grandpa passed away before they could say, oh, we just told you that to be good. And then the fear, you grow up with that fear, and you have some kind of scary encounter with a strange animal that some of the explanations lean towards. It could have been a sick animal somebody saw off in the distance in the dark, or it was up on the hind legs at one point and acting like a human in that sense. Your fears and your memories of these stories that you were told growing up overlap, and you think, oh my goodness, I've seen a skinwalker. And so there is more of a plausible explanation for this than the actual altering of biology and physics.
I totally agree with you on that. No disrespect to the Navajo, who this folklore originated from, but I do believe that over time,
stories get misinterpreted.
Exactly.
And traditions are things that are worth retelling with caution, of course. Cautionary tales, as the Navajo would probably teach their young. But again, the tradition also says that we're not supposed to be talking about it. So I don't know how much it's really discussed in Native culture.
Because they're discouraged from talking about it.
Because this is the point in the podcast where I would say, if you had your own stories and experiences, please write into us and tell us, and we may feature it on our podcast. But if we're not supposed to talk about it, neither are you.
If they're traditional.
Exactly.
But those of us that are not traditional, okay to talk about it. And I would like to know, have you seen
Skinwalker?
Have you seen a skinwalker? Let us know.
And did you get it on video? Send it in and we'll feature it on our podcast.
Yeah, let us know.
So our email is psychicandskeptic@gmail.com. Send in any of your para stories. We would love to hear what your experiences are, or let us know what you would like us to cover on a future topic on this podcast. So you can find us wherever you enjoy your podcasts, and thank you for listening.
Because the paranormal is the normal.
Not yet understood.